People everywhere are starting to listen to him. He's going on French, British, Italian, Japanese television.
This is the Wide World of Weingarten.
Wide World of Weingarten, post-week 18. It is January 10th, 2 o'clock here in Los Angeles. It was a wild weekend, the wildest week 18 on record. The NFL delivered possibly the most exciting week of the season on the last week of the regular season, and I only imagine how the playoffs can possibly top what we've seen over the last 24 plus hours. But before I recap everything that happened week 18, I wanted to go over the national championship, the college football national championship, which starts in a couple hours. So hopefully the turnaround is quick enough that you can listen to this and at least pick off a couple of these bets right before the game starts. That's why they're at the top of the show and not the back. But national championship bets I like the first quarter under 10 points, plus 125, 10.5, minus 120, whatever. Still all right. I like 10 plus 125. More of a chance for a push, though. Neither team scores 3 times in a row, plus 215. I bet that. DraftKings, Bryce Young, under 314.5 passing yards, minus 130. I like that. It's okay down to plus 112, minus 110. I think I don't think Bryce Young is gonna throw that much tonight, but I could be wrong. I tend to be wrong when it comes to some of this stuff. But then my bet on the side and total: Alabama plus 3, Alabama plus 2.5 at various available money lines. Paid a little bit of juice for the 3, did not pay for the 2.5. I have no play on the total. I would like to bet like an alt under 20 for $100 maybe, or $200 at 33 to 1 or 40 to 1, 50 to 1 if I can get it. I think I actually probably get higher than 50 to 1, and hope that this turns into an Alabama Auburn sort of game without the unfortunate overtime. But I'm not going to go crazy on those unders. In fact, I do think, if anything, this game is likely to fly over, as the Alabama National Championship games and playoff games tend to be high scoring, with the exception of, I think, 2011, where they won like 21-0. But that was an exception, not the rule. The Georgia money line is actually pretty cheap. If you don't want to bet Alabama, you could lay minus 140 on Georgia. You're kind of getting that Super Bowl effect, where the price is not necessarily what it would normally be because of the massive volume of bets coming in on the dog, because it's such a big game. But I am not betting on Georgia. I think Alabama has the better quarterback, has the best player on defense, Will Anderson, the best player in the game, Will Anderson, the best coach, Nick Saban. And I don't know. I think you could make some arguments why Georgia is going to win, but anytime you'll let me take Nick Saban and 3 points in a championship game, I'm going to take it, and that's my Alabama bet tonight. On to the NFL. A lot to talk about. Going to run through it fast. Tell you some of the highlights. There's some important stuff in here from what I saw week 18, how we can use some of it going forward in the playoffs, but might have delivered some of the best games of the season this last weekend. On Saturday, the Broncos played the Chiefs pretty close, led as late as the fourth quarter before losing late. Only real takeaway from this game: the Chiefs ended the season punting only 38 times. That's the second fewest in NFL history. I think early in the season, I, being a large Chiefs hater, was on the forefront of the Chiefs dynasty being over movement, and they ended up rebounding strong through the second half of the season. Looked great coming into the playoffs, and might be proving me wrong. Let's see what they could do this weekend. We'll talk more about the wild card stuff tomorrow, but good win for them to end the regular season. Vic Fangio, the Broncos coach, lost his job. Not surprising there. They just did not perform all season. Saturday night, the Cowboys played what was essentially a preseason or exhibition game and left their starters in until the fourth quarter. Had Dak Prescott throw 5 touchdowns against a bunch of backups. put up 50 points, whatever. I don't even know how many points they put up because I stopped caring. It was basically a scrimmage. Epic stat padding from the Cowboys offense here. They should be really proud of this win because the 49ers are coming to town this weekend, and I think they're probably going to put the Cowboys on their asses in front of the hometown fans. Obviously, things are different when the Cowboys put their true starting defense out there. There was no Micah Parsons, one of the top defenders in football. No Trevon Diggs, one of the best cornerbacks. But it was a bunch of backups. Can't really get much out of tape of a bunch of backups who aren't going to be contributing in a playoff game. But one thing I did notice watching the Cowboys defense that I noticed early, and then I focused on it the rest of the game, is middle linebacker Leighton Vander Ash, former first-round pick, 19th overall. I think he's in his third season. Don't let his stat line fool you. Don't let that late interception in garbage time fool you. He spent most of this game flat on his ass. I watched it. Watch the tape if you have a chance this week. Every play he was getting, any time he was getting engaged by a blocker, they were just taking him 7 yards down the line, putting him on the ground. And again, it was a scrimmage. There's a whole lot of reasons why that might have been happening that would not necessarily be happening on a starting defense that's going 100%. But that was something that I highlighted when I watched the game. And I suspect the 49ers coaches see it if I saw it, and I would be scheming to make sure I got my fullback on him or my tight ends if I was running a 2 tight end or a heavy set. I would get guys out in space, make sure I can get a block on that linebacker, and I would run the ball as much as I can against the Cowboys this game. If I'm the 49ers, I'd run behind Trent Williams. You have to scheme to take Micah Parsons out of the game one way or the other. But this is an exciting game. I'm really interested. A Cowboys-49ers wildcard matchup is a ratings bonanza for the NFL this coming weekend. And I'll have more on that game tomorrow when I dive more into it. I already did bet the 49ers a little bit, though. Another game Sunday morning, the Browns beat the Bengals backups 21-16. Joe Burrow sat out. Not much takeaway there. Browns got to rest a lot of their starters with the Raiders coming to town on Saturday. Good move by them. Smart move. Not a smart move was the Lions playing to win in the second half against the Packers, winning 37-30, and dropping from the first pick to the second overall pick in the process. You can debate whether or not the win was worth the morale in the locker room versus the first or second round pick. The Lions ended up playing hard all season. It's not something you can always say when it comes to 3-win teams with Jared Goff starting at quarterback, but Dan Campbell did a good job. Can't really say a lot of bad things after watching a bunch of their games and knowing what he was working with, limited at quarterback and talent-wise. One of the better 3-win teams I've ever seen. The Packers, on the other hand, looked unimpressive and uninterested in their last regular season game. But they did lock up the number 1 seed and a bye, so they get to rest and prepare for the divisional round. Not much of a takeaway on the Packers' performance other than I noticed Mason Crosby missed an extra point early, and kicking woes are going to catch up with the Packers in an important game. It's only a matter of time. Mason Crosby is definitely in the danger zone right now for the Packers. The Titans, other number 1 seed, held off the Texans 28-25. 301 yards, 3 touchdowns for Davis Mills, who continued to improve all season. Thrown in the fire as a third-round pick, forced to start at quarterback on a bad team. Did well. Can't really complain about his performance if they commit to him as a starter in the offseason. I could see him getting better. I can also see them deciding not to commit to him. But he's definitely, at the very worst, I would say he's a trade candidate that could get back more in return than the third round pick that was invested in him. So good move on the Texans there. The Titans are a team I'm going to have to look at a little more closely this weekend with the number 1 seed, a playoff bye, and Derrick Henry coming back healthy without a ton of in-season mileage on him. I think it's a very good spot for them to win the AFC or potentially at least win one game and get to the championship game. A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry is as good of a combo of skill set players that you're going to find on any team with if they're healthy. And if they can get anything out of Julio Jones for one final playoff push, that would be good for them. That'd be great for them. The Colts and Jaguars. This was one of the main events Sunday morning. I highlighted this game last week. Everybody just assumed the Colts were going to win. They were 2 touchdown favorites. The Jaguars were 7-1 underdogs, and everybody just assumed that the Colts would win because they're the Colts and the Jaguars were the Jaguars. And I said not so fast, and that was kind of cool. Trevor Lawrence, I was high on him all season. And I'd really been thinking all weekend. I was like, well, it's Trevor Lawrence. Like he's looked bad this year, but Urban Meyer was the coach, and there's all the stuff surrounding the team that was, kind of a cloud over everything going on. But Trevor Lawrence didn't stop being Trevor Lawrence. He didn't stop being the guy who beat Alabama in the national championship game twice. He's good. He's good, and just because he's had a bad start to his NFL career doesn't all of a sudden mean he forgot how to be a good quarterback. And the Jaguars showed that any given Sunday, any NFL team could come out and try to win, and any team could come out flat and never really get close to competing. The Jaguars took the lead, scores of 7-0, 13-3 at halftime, 23-3 before the fourth quarter started. Jonathan Taylor, he lost the MVP that he was never really a contender for. Contributed 77 rushing yards, 3 receptions for 18 yards. Just didn't get it done. And showed that in big games, this was, it happened last year, Derrick Henry versus the Packers. This happened, this last weekend, Jonathan Taylor versus Jaguars. Running backs in big games often are, you can scheme to stop them. And once you've done that, it was on Carson Wentz to lead this team to victory, and he can't do that. He's not good. I don't like Carson Wentz. He's on a list of quarterbacks that I personally would never recommend building a team around or trading for. And you could say that the Eagles definitely got the better end of that trade, coming away with a high draft pick out of the Carson Wentz deal. He wasn't even the best quarterback in this game. Trevor Lawrence will definitely ascend next year, and I really think he can still be a top-tier quarterback in the NFL. He threw 2 touchdowns, and he really did finally look like the Trevor Lawrence who won national championships at Clemson. The Jaguars, in general, now are an attractive job opportunity with the first overall pick and a healthy Trevor Lawrence. I said if the Jaguars win this game, I would forgive them for everything and we can start over. So I'm going to try being nice and positive about the Jaguars going forward. They won as 14-point underdogs, like I mentioned. It was a nice way to finish the season for a Jaguars team that struggled all year with the Urban Meyer hiring mistake, which they correctly didn't wait till the end of the season to step in and fix. But they ended up with the number 1 pick too and got a win week 18. So they did their part to help set up what could have been one of the greatest nights in NFL history. So thank you, Jaguars. You came through for possibly the first time in my adult gambling life. And I'm happy to be positive about the Jaguars going forward. The Steelers beat the Ravens 16-3 in overtime. That was the second leg that needed to happen. The second win that had to happen properly for the tie-off to be in play. The world got to watch Ben Roethlisberger continue to drag his corpse up and down the field one last time. He's he's way past his prime at this point, and it's kind of one of those like sad retirement tours at this point. Like in NFL history, most quarterbacks who stick around as long as a guy like Roethlisberger has don't end up going out a winner. They end up going out like we saw 2 weeks ago, throwing just 6 yards a pass and looking awful and insisting on throwing the ball 50 times in his last start. Fortunately for people who like watching that kind of football, you get a whole nother week of that. The Steelers ended up making the playoffs and will get to play the Chiefs this week in a game that should be a blowout. I say should be because as the Jaguars showed us, just nothing's ever guaranteed in the NFL. Najee Harris finished the season, touched the ball over 300 times, didn't fumble once. Excellent season for a rookie. Still not going to finish in the top 3 most likely for Rookie of the Year. But great pick for the Steelers, especially in that offense, that organization. Nice move. Steelers needed overtime to win this game, but they got us what we needed to get to the Chargers game, which I'll be getting to. I decided to save that till the end. The Bucks 41, Panthers 17. Tom Brady wins another game he's supposed to win. He stayed in a blowout that he could have come out of early. He wanted to get Rob Gronkowski his incentives. I think there were 2 incentives that were worth $500,000 each, not chump change. Bucks scored 24 points in the fourth quarter. Tom Brady continued to pump up that stat volume at this point in his career. I think he's intent on pushing his numbers as high as they can in hopes that it's 50 years or another lifetime until a quarterback can possibly break these numbers. And I'll talk about it for MVP tomorrow. I don't necessarily think he should be MVP just because he throws 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of a blowout week 18 and won't leave the game. I just think it's kind of funny that he wouldn't trust Blaine Gabbert to get his friend those incentives. And I mean, I don't blame him because I wouldn't trust Blaine Gabbert either. The 2021 Bucks become the first team in NFL history to win at least 70% of their games and throwing the ball at least 65% of the time. So that's another example of how you're seeing more of the video gaminization of football, optimized for absolute passing offense. In the past, a team throwing 65% of the time was unheard of, but we're going to see more and more of that, and as you could see by the 13-4 record of the Tampa Bay Bucks this year, the throwing 65% of the time offense is working. Seahawks 38, Cardinals 30. Cardinals were once the favorite for the number 1 seed in the NFC. They finished the season 1-4. This is potentially Pete Carroll or Russell Wilson or both's last game in Seattle. And I think it's time for a change for everyone involved, players, fans. I'd like to see Wilson on another team. I'd like to see Pete Carroll give way to somebody else at this point, although I do think he has more to give to football. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop back up in the college game in some capacity within a year, perhaps even this offseason if he's ready to make a change. But I do think a change is coming in Seattle this offseason one way or the other. The Cardinals, another one of the NFC teams that is backing into the playoffs. Not really inspiring with a 1-4 record down the stretch, but they did beat the Cowboys, so they got that going for them. I do think the Cowboys are beatable. I think every team in the playoffs is beatable one way or the other. I'll talk about vulnerabilities tomorrow. But the Cardinals now travel to Los Angeles for the first Monday night wild card game next Monday, which I will likely be attending. The Cardinals did win in LA earlier this season, 37-20, so they can win. They can beat the Rams. I'll dive into this game. Like I said, I'll probably be there, but I do think the Rams have the upper hand in this game with where both teams are at this point in the season. Speaking of the Rams, the 49ers beat them this weekend 27-24. The Rams couldn't hold on to a 17-3 lead at half. Unfortunately for me, I really needed them to get the Saints into the playoffs, so it crushed a whole bunch of my Saints playoffs futures, which was more disappointing. Game was in LA, but you couldn't really tell. It was easily over 50% 49ers fans at SoFi Stadium. And the 49ers scored 24 of the last 31 points, and there's 24 of the last 31 points in the second half and overtime. They didn't let Cooper Kupp touch the ball after the overtime started. And the Rams still ended up winning the division, but they're another NFL team backing into the playoffs with a loss that just not inspiring. They looked vulnerable. And anytime you can't hold a 17-3 lead at home and you allow a division rival to score 24 of the last 31 points in the second half and overtime, you're just it's not setting up for a positive playoff run. But you really got to go step by step, and the first step is to beat the Cardinals, and then we can worry about everything after that. As you can see, I'm wearing a Rams hoodie, so go Rams. The unfortunate thing with that loss is that it drops them from guaranteed 2 home playoff games to 1 home playoff game. So that's a big loss there. Although the Rams don't necessarily have home field advantage because opposing teams' fans have been taking over SoFi since it opened. The Washington Football Club, soon to be most likely renamed the Washington Admirals, beat the Giants 22-7. The Giants lost each of their last 6 games by double digits, failed to cover the spread in all those games. A lot of people are complaining about Joe Judge's quarterback sneak call inside their own 10-yard line in the second quarter yesterday, but I have no problem with that, really. What else are you going to do? It's week 18. You're a 4-win team full of players that have basically quit on you, and Jake Fromm's your starting quarterback. What did you want them to run, you know? I mean, you could have got the running back out in space and tried to prolong the drive, but there's not much you could do. And Joe Judge comes from the Bill Belichick coaching tree, which comes from the Bill Parcells coaching tree, which teaches coaches not to take risks inside their own 10-yard lines. The main Bill Belichick teaching philosophy for what to do in that situation is to run the ball, punt it for field position, and play defense, which is how the NFL and how football used to be played before everything became optimized for passing and quarterback protection. So I have no problem with that call. It absolutely didn't even surprise me when it happened because I knew who was calling it and why they were calling it and what they were doing. I also just understand that where they were in the season, they didn't care. You can play that situation differently when you're the Chargers or the Packers or New England, but the Giants at this point in the season, they have a lot of work to do, and it's still a rebuild, and it's going to continue to be a rebuild in New York until they find a quarterback, because I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. I don't think he was ever really the guy. I didn't like him when he was coming out of Duke, and it's a perpetual rebuild until they find a quarterback. Joe Judge isn't the problem as much as the lack of talent is, but if the rumors today are true that David Gettleman is retiring, that's a step in the right direction for the franchise. Saints ended the season with a 30-20 win over the Falcons, but unfortunately fell just short of the playoffs, with the 49ers ultimately coming back and beating the Rams, knocked the Saints out, killed all my futures. The Saints lost Taysom Hill again mid-game. He's just too injured this season. Foot, shoulder, everything going on with Taysom Hill. There's just too much. He needs an off-season off to really come back and potentially have a season as a starter. I was looking forward to seeing the Saints in the playoffs with their defense. Just unfortunate the Rams couldn't hold a 14-point lead. I think the Saints would have been more competitive in a rematch versus Cowboys this weekend than they were in their 27-17 loss earlier this season, where Taysom Hill threw 4 interceptions, and he was clearly playing hurt in that game. Couldn't push off, couldn't get anything under his throws. When you have foot injuries, leg injuries like that, you can't get your legs into those deep throws, and if you can't get your legs into the throws, then you can't play quarterback. I mean, you can't play quarterback in the NFL when you're going to leave balls out there for defenders just to pick off, and they had 4 interceptions in that game. So Taysom Hill needs an off season to rest and recuperate. Unfortunate though for the futures. I'm really bummed about those. I was looking forward to some big futures on a Saints playoff run. Good strong defensive team. That was a Super Bowl caliber defense. Unfortunately, won't even get to see them in a wild card game. Bills 27, Jets 10. Bills clinched the division, played their starters deep into the game versus the Jets. The Jets finished the year with an all-time NFL worst offense. Zach Wilson completed 7 passes in 20 attempts to end his awful first season in New York. Hard to tell if the Bills look good here because they're playing against the Jets, and it took them almost until the fourth quarter to really put this game away. But it ended up, as far as the Bills defense goes, even with Tre'Davious White ending up on the DL or injured list for the rest of the season, tearing an ACL or whatever his out for the season injury is. They ended up holding the Jets to one of their worst offensive games in franchise history with only 53 yards. Not a positive way to finish the year, especially with the play calling whiff by the offensive coordinator to lose against the Bucs last week. A lot more work to do to turn the Jets into a winner, although I do think Robert Saleh is a good coach, deserves more time, but he has some definite problems on offense to think about this offseason. Bills defense has allowed 11 passing touchdowns all season. The last team to allow that few touchdowns were the Ravens in 2011. That team featured Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs. So good company. That's a good comparison. If I think the Bills can make a deep playoff run, they have a very strong defense. Would have liked to, like I mentioned, I would have liked to see the Saints defense, but Bills defense might be the defense wins championships team to pivot to now. Have to look at that more this week. Dolphins finished the season with a 33-24 win over the Patriots, and likely were just a win against the Titans last week. It wasn't even close, by the way. They got blown out, but it was just that game against the Titans away from a 9-game win streak, 10-game win streak to finish the season, a playoff berth, and likely a Brian Flores Coach of the Year win. Instead, they finished the year with a 9-point win over the Patriots, and a game that had 57 points scored. The two quarterbacks combined to throw for 370 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception between them. And Brian Flores is now out of a job. I'm guessing that some of that has to do with Tua Tagovailoa and Deshaun Watson and not being able to necessarily get over the hump. But still shocking that after a 7-game win streak in the middle of the season, Brian Flores ends up being fired with a 2-0 record against the Patriots this year nonetheless. Meanwhile, the Patriots back into the playoffs with a loss here, another team backing into the playoffs. String of disappointing losses against the Colts, Bills, and Dolphins finished the season with a 1-3 record over the final month. The only highlight was a 50-10 blowout of the Jaguars, which looks less impressive when you see the Jaguars beat the Colts, same team the Patriots lost by 10 points to. The Dolphins, like I said, they fired Brian Flores this morning. A lot of people are very surprised. They're thinking this is a very bad, poor move. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I also think Dan Katz, Barstool Big Cat, summed it up on Twitter very very precisely this morning. He said, Brian Flores is a good coach, but people are acting like the Dolphins just fired Vince Lombardi. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he was a coach of the year candidate as recently as last Sunday before the Titans game started, and now he's unemployed, so life comes at you fast in the NFL. Flores finishes his stint in Miami with a 13-8 record with Tua Tagovailoa as the starting quarterback, 9-11 record with Matt Fitzpatrick, 2-3 with Jacory Brissett, and 0-3 with Josh Rosen. He won't likely be unemployed for long and should be a prime interview candidate for other head coaching jobs, or at the very worst, he will be a high-paid defensive coordinator next year for a year or two. All this reviewing of Week 18 was to lead you up to this moment, to the Chargers-Raiders game, and I can talk for an hour on this game and everything leading up to it, and the Jaguars had to win and the Steelers had to win to even get us to this point. I wasn't sure if I should start or if I should end with the Chargers-Raiders game today. I decided to end with it so I could put the national championship stuff first. I also just thought that this would probably run long at the end, so I'll just talk about the Chargers for as long as I want, basically. But what can I say? What can I say that hasn't already been said? It was one of the best games, if not the best game of the season. One of the best games I've watched in several seasons. And first, I mean, obviously, talk about the whole situation and the events that led up to there even being a possibility that this game could end in a tie-off. Like I said, they had to have the Jaguars beat the Colts, and the Steelers had to beat the Ravens. It took overtime for the Steelers to even get us in that position. But after those two things happened, it set up the tie situation, and neither team really needed to do anything. Neither team really needed to do the things that they did in this game. They risked injury to starting players. Remember, the average NFL career is 3.3 seasons, so about 50 total games if you're lucky the average player will play. And you want to waste one of your 50 games of your career, maybe you want to waste one of them playing what's essentially an exhibition game like this. I don't know. I thought that it was malpractice essentially by both coaches to even put their starting players, put any players in a position where they can get serious, life-altering injuries, torn ACL, massive concussion. I mean, we saw Donald Parham knock himself out, and that was unfortunate a couple weeks ago. Chargers had to deal with that, but I just don't understand how either team could put their players at risk of injury in what essentially was an exhibition game. Besides that, there were also financial issues that I think were overlooked in terms of discussing the potential tie-off, and that was playoff checks, bonus checks for assistant coaches, front office people. Everybody gets bonuses for the playoffs, and it doesn't necessarily matter to Derek Carr or Justin Herbert or Bosa or whoever is, the top paid guys don't necessarily care about that money, but to a lot of players, a lot of front office people, I mean, if you're a front office guy, you're not making $100,000, you're making, less than that, you're making $70,000 maybe. You get a $15,000 bonus for making the playoffs. That's a lot of money. A lot of people had bonus money on the line last night that was put in jeopardy, and the Chargers all ended up losing their bonus money. So I thought that was also kind of crazy. And I also don't think that either team had incentive to open their playbook to show anything exotic before a playoff game, for a wild card game, where both of these teams are going to be road teams, and you're likely going to need all your extra tricks to pull out a win, especially versus good teams, the Chiefs and Bengals. So the intentional tie scenario never happened. It never became a knee off, and could have really done a 30 for 30 on this whole game, and we haven't even started talking about it. And I mean, it's one of those things like you put your conspiracy hat on here for a second, and no one will ever be able to convince me otherwise that there weren't phone calls made between the commissioner's office and the front office of the Raiders and Chargers and ownership or whoever needed to be talked to and understood that the integrity of the game was important. I think that's a joke personally. I'm not even sure that ever actually even happened. That's just in my conspiracy head. But I don't think the league would ever have let that tie scenario play out as much as I wanted it to. And I did have bets. I had all sorts of bets tied to ties and unders, and Jaguars parlayed with tie, Jaguar parlayed with under 49, Jaguars parlayed with under 42. In hindsight, this morning I was thinking I really should have parlayed some Jaguars with the over stuff, but you can't think about that stuff after you didn't do it. But it was a crazy game. I mean, the main highlights, like I said, I could speak for hours on just this game, the leading up to it, the game itself, the overtime itself, the academic topics of prisoner's dilemma and what teams should have done, an optimal strategy the whole game. I mean, there's multiple academic papers that could be written just about this game. But the highlights: the Raiders went up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. There was they had a 17-14 lead at halftime after one of the most egregious pass interference calls of the year. If you were watching the game, you probably know what I'm talking about. Zay Jones got a pass interference call on him. He's the wide receiver for the Raiders. The ball was like not even 10-15 yards uncatchable out of the end zone. Just an egregious call. One of many by NFL referee crews this year. But that call was real bad against the Chargers. It gave the Raiders the ball at the 1-yard line right before halftime. They responded with a touchdown, take the lead. Raiders started the third quarter with a touchdown and a field goal, pushed the lead to 29-14, which killed the largest lead under 14.5 point prop. You jerks. Thanks for that. I really needed to lose one more bet on top of that last night. So thank you for killing the under 14.5 point largest lead with the 15-point lead. Like I said, I can't thank you enough. Chargers came back though from 15 down. It was at 15 down. Finally, everyone was starting to tweet, "Oh, Steelers can relax. Steelers are probably going to make the playoffs," but nope. Not happening. Chargers came back with a touchdown, 2-point conversion, cut it from 15-7. Marched downfield on a 19-play drive, went 83 yards to score a touchdown as time expired in the fourth quarter. It was a pretty epic drive, all things considered. And then they got an extra point to tie the game. And here's where stuff. I mean. Did it start getting wild here? No. I mean, it started getting wild when the Chargers came back down 15 and tying the game with no time left. I mean, that's just to get to this point. Everything that's happened is crazy. But I'll tell you right here is mistake number one that Brandon Staley made, and it's a much bigger mistake than the timeout that everyone was harping on. But right here was absolutely mistake number one, and the Chargers absolutely should have gone for 2 points in this situation with 0 seconds on the clock at the end of the fourth quarter on the road with the ability to knock out the Raiders from the playoffs. Aside from being an epic walk-off, had they gone for it and scored a 2-point conversion, the Chargers had multiple things going in their favor here that should have been a green light for the 2-point conversion, but mainly the Raiders defense was absolutely gassed. They had just been on the field for 19 plays. Why would you not go for 2 against a defense that had been on the field for 19 plays just now to end the game? then you have Justin Herbert. It's not like you have Taylor Heineke or Joe Webb, or I'm trying to think of like the word Jacory Brissett. It's not like you have some bum at quarterback. It's not like you're starting, I'd say Davis Mills, but he had a really good season in the end. So it's not like you're starting some generic bum at quarterback. You have Justin Herbert, who's elite, and aside from being elite, he's 6'5". He can run the ball. You could get him out in space. You could run a bootleg. Versus gas defense, you could have got the quarterback out in space, given him an RPO, a bootleg, anything. Could have called all sorts of plays. You could have called your best play in your entire bag of tricks. It's the last play with 0 seconds left to end the fourth quarter. But the thing is the most important thing at this point is you avoid another 10 minutes of putting your defense back on the field in overtime and forcing your guys to go as hard as they physically can. And I mean, everyone's already gassed by the end of the fourth quarter, but you're asking them to go as hard as they can for another 10 minutes and then turn around and play a wild card game next week after showing all your best stuff on tape. So everyone's already lost the war here at this point, really. They go for the extra point, not 2-point conversion, and I get it. I get in that moment being afraid to go for 2, but absolutely on the road at that point, coming off a 19-play drive, the 2-point conversion was the right decision there. You really can't convince me otherwise, because all you did is prolong the suffering, essentially. It's not like you were going to, you couldn't guarantee you're going to get the ball in overtime. At best, you're going to, get the ball first, win a coin toss, but easily could have been a Raiders touchdown walk-off. That's that. So I think the 2-point conversion there would have been the best shot for the Chargers to win the game with an outright win. Overtime starts. The Raiders drive. It looks like they might score a touchdown. They end up settling for a field goal, so they're up 3 in overtime. New overtime rules, not sudden death. Chargers get to touch the ball now. Chargers get the ball, take it downfield, 8 plays, 52 yards, end up kicking a field goal. We're back tied again, 32-32. There's about 4:30 left in the game. It is finally getting interesting at this point. Risk rooms all over the country, all over the Caribbean, all over Malta and Gibraltar and Canada on the Mohawk Reservation, Curacao, probably some places in the Far East I don't even know about, and in Europe and Sweden and the Canby trading room, all over the world at this point with 4 minutes left. People are finally starting to take notice of the fact that there's some major bets on the ties that are all of a sudden very live, mine included. But you have just enough time with 4 minutes, 30 seconds left, 2-minute warning. You have 2 minutes. You have 4 minutes to run, essentially a 4-minute offense, kick a field goal, or the shenanigans could start and both teams could just run it out. And the Raiders get the ball after a touchback. They start throwing, actually. They come out and they throw it for 17 yards to Brian Edwards, which I thought was kind of crazy. I'm not sure I would have even put the ball in the air there, but that should tell you at that point the Raiders were still trying to win the game with 4 minutes left. They weren't conceding the tie. Had they wanted to concede the tie at that point, they could have come out of the touchback at the 25-yard line and run the ball up the middle. Instead, they threw for 17 yards and started moving the ball. But they did not stop the clock. The Chargers did not stop the clock. The Raiders also did not go particularly fast. They were not playing at a particularly fast tempo at this point. So they kept moving the ball a little bit. They got to their 44-yard line. There's 2 minutes left. A 2-minute warning in overtime stops the clock. The drive keeps going right after 2-minute warning. A couple plays later, the Chargers end up calling a timeout with the clock running, 38 seconds left. And this is the part that people lost their minds about. And I understand why people are upset about this, but I personally don't have an issue with the timeout call in that situation. You're on the verge. You're 70, almost 80 plays into the game on defense. Everyone's gassed. It's not a bad idea to call timeout there. Let your guys recover. Talk about what you want to do on the biggest play of the game. You got a little peep at whatever formation they were planning on running. Let them call another play. You can get your right package into the game. Get everything set up the way you want it. And they did. I have no problem with any of that. Just that's what it came down to was the defense. They were on their 39-yard line at that point. They were on the Chargers' 39-yard line, which is like a 53, 54-yard field goal. All you got to do is stop Josh Jacobs. They had one chance to stop him, and they let him pick up 10 yards. That's 10 yards closer. That turned the field goal from a 53 into a 43, and it got it close enough where there was no downside. They called a timeout with 2 seconds left. They kicked the field goal. You either walk off with the win, you get the tie, or there was like a 0.00001% chance of a run back theoretically. But from that distance, it was tie or win, and the timeout didn't change anything. The defensive play call and the lack of execution in that moment. And the lack of execution those final 4 minutes on any of those plays had the Chargers just done a little bit more, might have gotten that tie. And it reminds me a lot of the 1961 Packers Eagles Super Bowl. Not Super Bowl, I'm sorry, the championship. There wasn't even a Super Bowl then. It wasn't Super Bowl till 66. 61 championship game was the only championship game Vince Lombardi lost in his career. Chuck Bednarik was a two-way player, linebacker, center for the Eagles. He was playing linebacker on the final drive of the game. Stopped Jim Taylor short of the goal line and physically basically just sat on top of him until the clock expired. And I think in that situation, the Chargers could have done a better job basically sitting on the clock, sitting on the ball, driving more time off on those final 4 minutes, kicking the ball. I mean, you might get a penalty for that, so maybe don't kick the ball. But they just didn't come through when they needed it. That's the story of football, is just one more play. All you needed was one more stop. All you needed was 5 more feet. They just needed to get one more stop right there at the end, and probably still would have got a field goal attempt, but a much longer field goal attempt. But a lot of things were done incorrectly in the final 10 minutes of the game, and the timeout didn't cause the Chargers to lose, but didn't help anything. And at the end of the day, when you hire a 30-year-old head coach to lead your entire organization, you get to live with the growing pains, and some growing pains are slightly worse than others. The field goal itself, there's one more slight twist that I don't think was discussed about enough. But had I been the special teams coach for the Chargers, as any John Madden football player knows, the game can't end on a penalty. The Chargers should have continued to line up offsides for every field goal attempt. And I don't mean just like jump offsides. I mean just like put a guy, just have him standing 5 feet on the other side of the field. Have him on the other side, have him in the backfield. Just walk into the backfield every play. They'll call a flag. They have to call a flag. Can't just kick field goal with a guy on the other side like that. But Chargers should have continued to line up offsides on every field goal attempt, egregiously offsides, prevent the play from being run. Eventually, they'd keep getting penalties, keep moving the ball 5 yards closer. Eventually, they'd just get half distance to the goal, and they'd be down to the 1-inch line. But if they decline the penalty, the game ends in a tie. So had I been the coach, I probably would have tried that. Although, again, this goes back to my conspiracy theory thing that I do wonder, were the teams instructed not to try any shenanigans like this? Because, video game players, John Madden players all know that that's a way to trick the computer or trick another player into losing a game that they can win. But that was really, we came down to 2 seconds away from possibly the greatest tie in NFL history. And both teams were lucky to avoid serious injury in that game. The Raiders might have won the battle metaphorically, but they probably ended up losing the war. Their defense was on the field for 85 plays. They have quickly they have a quick turnaround now to play on Saturday morning. They're on the Saturday morning slot for Wild Card weekend on the road in Cincinnati, which means their biological clocks are going to have an early Saturday morning kickoff after a late Sunday night win with overtime where the defense was on the field for 80 plus snaps. So you're already into your Monday recovery day, which gives you a 4-day, or really like a 3.5-day, Tuesday to Friday sort of week to game plan before you fly out. I'm assuming they're going to fly out Friday. Got to fly out Friday probably to Cincinnati before you're in Cincinnati having to walk through Friday night. So you're not getting a lot of recovery and practice time this week, which is not great, coming off an 85 play defensive performance. And all of this is assuming that nobody else on the Raiders commits any felonies before the wild card game, which is also never a guarantee when it comes to the Raiders. So really bad spot for them, and it's kind of what I was getting into in the beginning of this whole tie-off discussion is, why would you put yourself in a position where you just forced your defense to go out there and play 85 games of organized violence, 85 plays of organized violence, when you could have both rested your starters and been more prepared for a wild card game? I don't know. I just think disappointing. We were 2 seconds away from all the unintended consequences of the tie. And really, Brandon Staley should be disappointed for all the decisions he did and didn't make down the stretch. The Chargers, they came so close to the playoffs in his rookie head coach season, only to get knocked out in the final play of overtime on the final week of the season. And it's not just that he should be disappointed; it's worse. He should feel bad. He should feel bad that in a league where the players average 3.3 years, he asked his players to go out there and put their bodies on the line for 70 minutes for nothing. The Chargers, they just went out there, and by the end of that game, the way it was played with the penalties and everything, they were just really expensive jobbers last night for the Raiders to get the Raiders in the playoffs at their expense. And the Raiders had 4 penalties for 38 yards compared to 10 for 108 yards against the Chargers, which I don't know. I truly do not know what the deal is with the Raiders, but I can tell you that I've watched them more since Thanksgiving when they were on TV versus Cowboys, and that was one of the worst officiated games I've seen in this season and several seasons. The pass interference calls on underthrown balls were egregious in that game. They have been all season. It does seem like the Steelers and the Raiders have benefited greatly from that style of play calling and officiating. But the Thanksgiving game, Raiders-Cowboys, one of the worst officiated games I've seen, and this game was up there too. And it really seems like Raiders games down the stretches have been questionably officiated. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist when it comes to NFL games. If I did believe in that, I would expect the Raiders to be on the negative end of getting calls. So seeing Raiders games getting egregious calls in favor of the Raiders down the stretch has been very odd to watch for me. And the Raiders cost me a whole bunch of money down the stretch, winning 4 games, not cashing under 7.5, under 8.5 wins, making the playoffs. All very unexpected with the way they were playing. I think a lot of it was ref assisted personally, but I don't have any I don't have any sort of crazy explanation to say, well, this is why the Raiders are being helped by the referees with these these calls. I don't know. I can't tell you that there's some sinister plot here other than I've seen some really bad officiating lately, and they just happen to be mostly Raiders games. And I don't like bad officiating. I think it makes the NFL worse to watch. But yeah, 10 penalties. 10 penalties on the Chargers last night was unusually high. And I think in the end, it was basically the dumbest possible outcome for that exciting of a game. The high-scoring, high-intensity game, it ended up knocking the Chargers out, putting the Raiders in a road game with a gas defense versus Joe Burrow. Great job, everybody involved in that game. Congratulations. You probably got the NFL record ratings last night. But I don't understand how it was better for the Raiders and Chargers to go all out instead of resting guys and keeping them healthy for a wild card game where you have to go on the road. You're already at a disadvantage, especially when one of these teams would have had to play Saturday morning, and the Raiders won, and they still have to play Saturday morning. So congratulations, Raiders. And why do the Raiders want to go to Cincinnati with that kick instead of Kansas City? Just because Kansas City blew them out twice this season? I mean, those were some embarrassing blowouts, but the Raiders also got blown out by the Bengals a couple weeks ago. It was 32-13, and the Raiders only got to 13 points with a late fourth quarter touchdown when the game was already decided. So now they're going back to play the Bengals again. Granted, it is hard to beat a team twice in the same season like that, but the only thing harder than beating a team twice in a season is beating a team for the third time. So I'm not sure that a rematch against the Chiefs, I mean, even though you do go on the road to Arrowhead where it is notoriously hard to win, I don't think a rematch against the Chiefs is necessarily a worse situation if you get an extra day off. If you were able to play on Sunday instead of Saturday, and you go on the road still, but you do it with a healthy team, a team that rested all this week, as opposed to now you're going to play the Bengals with a tired defense. So it's a good reminder. Every game matters. Every win, every loss at the end of the season, the things that separate a potential playoff team from a team that's going home early is it's this much. There's just the difference between the Colts and the Dolphins and the Chargers and the Steelers, is minuscule. And the Colts and the Dolphins and the Chargers, they ended up going 9-8, and they missed the playoffs, and they lost to the Jaguars, and the Colts lost to the Jaguars, Dolphins lost to the Jaguars, Chargers lost to the Texans, Steelers tied with the Lions. They're going to end up making the playoffs at 9-7-1 over these three teams at 9-8, and that's what it comes down to is handling your business at the end of the season. There's never just a guaranteed win in the NFL, and those games against the Jaguars and the Texans that you just think are fill-in wins don't pan out, and that's it. That's difference between playoffs and not the playoffs was 1 second, 1 win. That ends up being the difference. So Raiders win, go on the road early Saturday morning against the Bengals. I'm on the Bengals -6, -115. Also not necessarily opposed to just betting the Bengals money line here. I'm sure there'll be a popular tease down to 1 or half a point from 6.5. And then the other game I bet the 49ers +3 early. Those are the two games I like for the wild card. To start, I'll go over those games more in depth, more detail this week as the week goes on. But I wanted to get those numbers down early. I got some more baseball news and stuff to go over as the week goes on. But as we're already about an hour into this, I will save the baseball news for tomorrow. I'll wrap up NFL awards stuff tomorrow as we have more time. I don't think anyone wants another hour of this today. We'll talk about golf. I didn't even have a chance to talk about golf. The PGA is back. I didn't bet much this first week. Probably fortunate John Rahm ended up coming in second. I probably would have just lost money on betting him to win. Also have a whole bunch of stuff to do with baseball cards, which I just got these new boxes of the Topps 2021 All-Star Rookie Cup sets. Each one has one autograph in it. I will discuss with you what all this fine print on the back means tomorrow and what the odds actually are like of pulling good cards. We'll talk about that. Like I said, we just don't really have time today. It's already over an hour. If you're still listening, congratulations. But yeah, go through all that stuff tomorrow, and I'm also working on my inaugural VSiN Wide World of Weingarten. All Weingarten team should be ready to come out at some point tomorrow. I figure that if other publications can have their say in who's the best players, we might as well start listening to me, because my lists are just as good as most of these other people, if not better. And we see a lot of bad voting going on. So look forward to my list tomorrow. Got to work on that. I'll be back. Hope you enjoy the national championship game. Go Alabama. Hope I get a win there. Real bummed about that tie, or the not winning the tie bet, but that's life. Get over it. We got a lot more betting to do. Got a whole lot of playoff stuff coming up. A lot of opportunities to make a lot of money. So just got to keep going forward. We'll be back tomorrow. Got a whole lot more to talk about this week. So thanks for tuning in.